Hi, my name's Katheryn, and I'm a yoga instructor here at the UTSA Rec Center. I'm certified through Yoga Fit Training Level 1, and my Text Fit presentation idea is modifying yoga poses to cater to students in your yoga class who have injuries, focusing on the three categories. First, injuries related to the wrists and shoulders. Second, injuries involving the neck, spine, and low back. And third, injuries to the lower body, including the hips, groin, and knees. Today I will be presenting the body of the class, focusing on sun salutations, as they're a major part of most yoga classes, and we'll use these foundational postures throughout the remainder of the workout. I'll be breaking the sun salutations down into the first standing portion, the weight-bearing portion, and the final standing portion, beginning first with injuries to the wrists or shoulders. For the first standing portion, those with wrist injuries should be comfortable inhaling and lifting the arms overhead. Those suffering from shoulder injuries, inhaling the hands to heart center. Exhaling and hinging into a forward fold. This should be comfortable for both shoulder and wrist injuries. Inhaling for a half lift, lengthening the spine, and exhaling into a forward fold. For the weight-bearing portion, exhaling and stepping into a kneeling lunge, bringing the other knee back to meet. For those suffering from wrist injuries, they can either make fists or placing their forearms on the ground, inhaling and coming to plank. Here we will skip chaturanga altogether, turning the tops of the feet under, allowing the thighs to touch the ground, and inhaling into cobra. To modify downward facing dog, turning the toes under and drawing the hips up into what is also known as dolphin pose. For those suffering from shoulder injuries, we're going to avoid chaturanga and upward facing dog and downward facing dog altogether, as they put a lot of strain on the shoulders. Giving the option to exhale into cat, rounding the upper back, drawing the navel in. Inhaling into cow, dropping the belly button down, turning the hips up, the shoulders up, and the crown of the head up. And exhaling into child's pose, spreading the knees wide, bringing the toes together, and pressing the hips back, drawing the hands forward. If there's any discomfort in the shoulders, they can place the hands back by the feet. Coming out of these poses, for those who have wrist injuries in dolphin pose, coming to all fours. For those with wrist injuries, coming back to this pose. Inhaling and stepping the right foot between the hands for a kneeling lunge. Stepping the left to meet, inhaling and sweeping the arms overhead, or bringing the hands to prayer, and exhaling back to mountain. For those suffering from injuries to the neck, spine, or lower back, this is where we're going to use our props. We'll need about 4 blocks here, depending on the height of the individual. Inhaling the arms overhead. If we have neck injuries, reminding them to keep their neck stable, not turning their gaze up or down. Exhaling, hinging at the hips, and placing our hands on blocks to shorten the distance that we're bending our back. Inhaling for a half lift, reminding those with neck injuries to keep the neck neutral. And if it's comfortable, coming into a slight forward fold, otherwise keeping our hands where they are on our blocks. Inhaling and stepping back to a kneeling lunge for the weight-bearing portion. For those with neck injuries, we'll want to keep the neck stable. We could possibly come to a kneeling plank, exhaling into chaturanga, skipping cobra for this pose if it's uncomfortable on the back, and just pressing back to child's pose. Or if it's comfortable, drawing the hips up and back, coming to downward facing dog. Coming out of these poses, we come to all fours, inhaling and stepping the right leg between the hands for a kneeling lunge, placing our hands on blocks for support, inhaling the other leg to meet. Inhaling for a half lift if it's comfortable, reminding those with neck injuries to keep the neck neutral. Exhaling into a forward fold if it's comfortable, or keeping the hands where they're at. Inhaling, sweeping the arms overhead, or simply bringing them to prayer, and exhaling to mountain. For those suffering with injuries from the hips, groin, or knee area, we're going to want to use a blanket or a bolster. Placing it about halfway back on our mat so that they will be able to rest their knees. Inhaling and sweeping the arms overhead. Exhaling and hinging at the hips into a forward fold. If this causes any discomfort in the hips, placing our hands on blocks, spreading the knees wide, and placing a slight bend in the knees. Inhaling for a half lift. Exhaling into a forward fold. Inhaling and stepping back into a kneeling lunge, placing the knee on our blanket or bolster. Bringing the other knee back to meet. This is where we can come to a kneeling plank for chaturanga, or if it's comfortable, coming to a full plank. Exhaling into chaturanga. Inhaling into cobra or upward facing dog with our knees supported on the blanket. If it's comfortable, tucking the toes under, drawing the hips up for downward facing dog, or coming to child's pose, placing 2 blocks underneath our seat and exhaling down. Coming out of these poses, coming back to all fours, resting our knees on our bolster. Inhaling and stepping the right foot between the hands for a kneeling lunge. Stepping the other foot to meet. Inhaling for a half lift. Exhaling in a forward fold. Inhaling and sweeping the arms overhead. And exhaling to mountain.